They say love can blind, but the truth always finds a way to be seen, even if it arrives too late. On the most important day of Isabella Reed's life, she was ready to walk down the aisle surrounded by friends, family, and the man she believed was her future. But as the guests gasped at the perfect scene, her faithful dog Atlas saw something no one else did. For weeks he tried to warn her. For nights he stood guard. And now, right in the middle of the wedding aisle, he refuses to let her take another step. What happens next shocks everyone, and within minutes Isabella discovers that the man who was supposed to protect her was hiding a devastating secret. Because sometimes fate sends a warning in the most unexpected way, and sometimes that warning has four paws, watchful eyes, and an instinct that never fails. I'd love to hear where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying this, let me know in the comments and make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely won't want to miss. Isabella Reed awoke to the gentle glow of the morning sun streaming through her bedroom window. The soft light danced across the walls, illuminating the delicate lace of her wedding dress, which hung on a nearby chair like a shimmering promise of the day to come. Today was supposed to be the culmination of her dreams, a wedding to Thomas Caldwell, the man she believed was the love of her life. Yet despite the flawless setting and the excitement buzzing in the air, an unsettling feeling gnawed at her insides. As she sat up in bed, her heart fluttered with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. "It's just nerves," she whispered to herself, attempting to dispel the tightness in her chest. She glanced over at Atlas, her loyal German shepherd. He lay curled, up at the foot of her bed, his dark eyes fixed intently on her as if he could sense her turmoil. "Hey, buddy," she said softly, reaching down to scratch behind his ears. "Are you excited for today?" Atlas responded with a low, almost imperceptible growl, his gaze unwavering. Isabella chuckled nervously, thinking it was merely his way of expressing concern. "It's just a wedding, nothing to worry about," she assured him, but the feeling of unease remained a shadow lurking in the corners of her mind. After a quick shower, Isabella stepped into her wedding dress, the fabric hugging her figure as she admired herself in the mirror. The reflection staring back at her was radiant, yet something felt amiss. The dress, the hair, the makeup, all perfect. But the smile she wore seemed forced to mask over a growing sense of doubt. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. "You've got this," she told herself. "Today is going to be magical." But as she moved through the morning preparations, the feeling of disquiet only intensified. While her friends and family hovered around helping her with last-minute details, Isabella couldn't shake the sense that something was off. The laughter, the excitement, it all felt distant, as if she were watching it through a glass pane. "Isabella, are you ready?" her mother called from the hallway, her voice full of anticipation. "The photographer is here, and we need to get some pictures before the ceremony." "Just a second," Isabella replied, forcing a smile as she glanced at Atlas, who remained close by, watching her with an intensity that made her heart ache. "Come here, Atlas," she beckoned, kneeling to wrap her arms around his sturdy neck. "You're my best boy, aren't you?" Atlas leaned into her embrace, his warmth comforting amid the chaos. But even as she savored the moment, she couldn't ignore the way he tensed whenever Thomas entered the room. Flashback to 2 years. Earlier, the first time she met Thomas. It had been at a corporate event, a gathering of influential figures in the architecture and law fields. He had charmed her with his quick wit and dazzling smile, sweeping her off her feet. "You're incredible, Isabella," he had said, his blue eyes sparkling. "We should definitely collaborate on a project sometime." Everyone had encouraged her to pursue him, to give in to the whirlwind romance that blossomed. Yet Atlas had been a constant presence, his low growls and watchful eyes a stark contrast to the allure of Thomas. "Why don't you like him, boy?" Isabella had asked Atlas, one night sitting cross-legged on the floor, while Thomas chatted animatedly on the phone. But all Atlas had done was stare at the wall, his muscles taut, as if he were poised for a fight. Isabella shook her head, trying to dispel the memories as she put on her shoes. "Just nerves," she muttered again, but the words felt hollow. As the last touches were added to her hair, Isabella caught a glimpse of Atlas in the mirror, his body rigid as he watched Thomas approach. "Atlas, come here," she called, but he wouldn't budge. Instead, he stood his ground, growling softly under his breath as Thomas tried to pet him. "Maybe we should keep Atlas away during the ceremony," Thomas suggested casually, his tone light. "He seems a bit protective." Isabella's heart sank at his words. "He's just being a dog," she replied, forcing a smile. "He'll be fine." But as they drove to the venue, the unease only deepened. Atlas sat in the back seat, his head resting on Isabella's lap, and she stroked his fur absent-mindedly, finding solace in his presence. "You're my partner in everything, aren't you?" she whispered, and Atlas looked up at her, his eyes filled with an understanding that transcended words. The venue was breathtaking, an elegant garden surrounded by blooming flowers and twinkling fairy lights. Isabella stepped out of the car, her breath catching at the sight of the altar, adorned with white roses. "It's beautiful," she said, turning to Thomas, who nodded approvingly. "Just like you," he replied, his smile warm. But, as he reached for her hand, Atlas growled lowly again, stepping between them. "Atlas!" Isabella exclaimed, surprised. "What's gotten into you?" "Maybe he should stay in the car," Thomas suggested, a hint of irritation creeping into his voice. "No," Isabella said firmly, kneeling to scratch Atlas behind the ears. "He's coming with us." As they walked towards the altar, Isabella's heart raced with anticipation and dread, sensing the tension in the air. Atlas stayed close, his eyes darting around as if he were on high alert. The ceremony began, and Isabella's friends and family filled the seats, their faces beaming with joy. She stood at the altar, her heart pounding as she gazed into Thomas's eyes. "This is it," she thought, trying to ignore the voice in her head that urged her to run. But then Atlas broke free from Isabella's side. In an instant he lunged forward, barreling towards Thomas and knocking him down with a force that sent gasps rippling through the crowd. "Atlas!" Isabella screamed, her heart racing as chaos erupted. Guests stood in shock, some gasping, others crying out. "Get him off me!" Thomas shouted, panic lacing his voice as he struggled on the ground. "Atlas, no!" Isabella cried, rushing forward. But as she reached her dog, she realized that the moment had transformed from an attack into something far more profound. Atlas was not merely reacting to a perceived threat, he was protecting her. "Stop!" a voice rang out, cutting through the chaos. A woman stepped forward, her hands trembling as she held up her phone. "Isabella, you need to see this now." Isabella turned towards the woman, her heart racing. It was Naomi Carter, a name that echoed in her mind like a forgotten memory. "What are you doing here?" "I came to warn you," Naomi said, her voice urgent. "You have to see what he really is." With shaking hands, Isabella took the phone. The screen lit up with messages and images, alarming evidence that shattered the illusion of her perfect life. "No," Isabella breathed, her heart sinking as she scrolled through the revelations. Thomas was not the man she thought he was. He was a con man, a manipulator, who had left a trail of destruction in his wake. As the truth crashed down around her, Isabella looked up at Thomas, who was scrambling to his feet, his face twisted in anger and fear. In that instant, everything she had ignored, the warning signs, Atlas's growls, her nagging doubts, came rushing back, and she finally saw him for who he truly was. "Isabella, it's not what it looks like," Thomas shouted, desperation etched into his features. But she shook her head, a newfound strength surging through her. "No, Thomas, you've been lying to me from the start. I won't be your fool any longer." The crowd murmured, and Isabella felt the weight of their gazes pressing down on her. She took a deep breath, her heart racing as she turned away from him. "I won't marry you," she declared, her voice steady. As she stepped back, Atlas stood protectively at her side, and in that moment she knew she had escaped a life built on deception. The chaos around her faded, and all that mattered was the bond she shared with her dog, her true protector. "So let's go, Atlas," she said softly, and he nudged her hand with his nose as if to remind her that she was not alone. Together they turned away from the altar, leaving the shattered remnants of her dreams behind. As the chaos of the wedding ceremony began to settle, Isabella stood frozen, grappling with the overwhelming reality that had just unfolded before her. The air was thick with murmurs and astonished gasps. She felt the weight of hundreds of eyes upon her, each gaze filled with a mixture of shock and curiosity. In the midst of it all, her heart raced, echoing the tumultuous emotions that churned within her. "Isabella, are you okay?" Lauren rushed to her side, her voice laced with concern. She reached out, grabbing Isabella's arm gently, as if anchoring her to the moment. I don't know what just happened." Isabella stammered, her voice barely a whisper. She looked down at Atlas, who remained by her side, his posture alert, his dark eyes scanning the crowd. The Pastor Alamo had been her unwavering protector, and she felt the warmth of his presence grounding her amid the chaos. "Isabella, we need to get you out of here," Lauren urged, her voice rising above the cacophony. "This is a nightmare, and you don't have to face it alone." Isabella nodded, but her feet felt like lead. She glanced back at Thomas, who was now on his feet, his face a mask of fury and humiliation. The poised facade he had maintained for so long had shattered, revealing a darker side that she had only begun to comprehend. She could feel the adrenaline pulsing through her veins, and she took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "Let's go," she finally said, her voice gaining strength. As they turned to leave, she felt Atlas nudge her leg, as if reminding her that he was there, always ready to protect her. Outside the venue, the late afternoon sun shone brightly, a stark contrast to the dark cloud looming over her heart. A small group of reporters had gathered, eager for a glimpse of the bride caught in a scandal. Isabella's stomach twisted at the thought of being thrust into the spotlight, but she realized she had no choice. Her life had been turned upside down, and now she needed to reclaim it. "Isabella, can we get a statement?" one of the reporters shouted, shoving a microphone toward her, while another snapped pictures. "Please just leave her alone," Lauren interjected, stepping in front of Isabella, her protective instincts kicking in. "She's just been through something traumatic." "Traumatic, you mean the wedding that didn't happen?" Another reporter sneered, their tone dripping with sarcasm. Isabella felt the tears welling in her eyes as she turned away, unable to face the onslaught of questions and camera flashes. She felt exposed like a raw nerve. Atlas remained close, his body language a clear reminder of his loyalty. "Let's just get out of here," Isabella said, her voice trembling but firm. "I need space." With Lauren leading the way, they quickly made their way to the car parked a few blocks away. Once inside, Isabella let out a shaky breath, her heart still racing. She turned to Lauren, who was visibly shaken but trying to maintain her composure. "I can't believe Thomas. I thought he was the one," Isabella murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "How could I have been so blind?" "Isabella, you weren't blind. He was just incredibly good at hiding who he really was," Lauren replied, her expression softening. "You didn't deserve this. You deserve someone who will cherish you, not deceive you." Isabella nodded, but the pain of betrayal felt like a heavy weight on her chest. "I thought I knew him. I thought I was marrying my soulmate. Sometimes the people we think we know best are the ones who hide the most," Lauren said, her eyes filled with empathy. "But you're going to get through this. You're stronger than you think." As they drove, Isabella stared out the window, watching the world outside blur past. The city felt so alive, yet she felt utterly detached from it. She needed time to process everything, to mourn the future she had envisioned for herself, now shattered. When they arrived at her apartment, Isabella stepped inside the familiar surroundings, feeling foreign. She sank into the couch, burying her face in her hands as the tears finally fell. Atlas, sensing her distress, laid his head on her lap, offering comfort and solace. "Thank you, boy," she whispered, running her fingers through his fur. "You were right all along." Hours passed as Isabella remained on the couch, lost in her thoughts. The phone buzzed incessantly on the coffee table, but she ignored it, feeling overwhelmed by the world outside. She barely noticed when Lauren returned from the kitchen, holding a glass of water. "Drink this," Lauren urged, placing the glass in Isabella's hands. "You need to take care of yourself." Isabella took a sip, feeling the cool water soothe her dry throat. "What do I do now?" she asked, her voice thick with uncertainty. "You take a breath, remind yourself that you've escaped a dangerous situation, and then you figure out what you want moving forward," Lauren replied, her tone encouraging. "You're not alone in this. I'm here and we'll figure it out together." "Thank you, Lauren," Isabella said, a small smile breaking through her despair. "I don't know what I'd do without you." "You'll never have to find Hout, Lauren promised, squeezing her shoulder gently. But first you need to take some time for yourself. Let's get away from all this craziness for a while. Isabella nodded, knowing Lauren was right. She needed to disconnect to heal without the constant barrage of questions and judgment from the outside world. Maybe a weekend at the cabin, she suggested tentatively. Perfect idea, just you, me, and Atlas. Lauren beamed, clearly relieved at the thought of a getaway. I'll pack our bags while you take Atlas for a walk. You both need some fresh air. Isabella stood up, feeling a flicker of hope. Okay, let's do it. She called to Atlas, who perked up, tail wagging as he sensed their plans were shifting. As they strolled through the nearby park, Isabella took in the sights and sounds around her. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over everything. Children laughed and played, couples strolled hand in hand, and dogs bounded happily across the grass. For a moment she forgot about her troubles, allowing herself to be lost in the beauty of the moment. Look at them, Isabella said, gesturing toward a golden retriever chasing a frisbee. They're so happy and carefree. That's how we need to be, Lauren replied, glancing at her. Embrace the joy in the little things, even when everything feels messy. As they walked, Isabella's mind wandered to the animals she had once loved so dearly, the moments spent volunteering. At the shelter before her life had become consumed with wedding plans, she felt a pang of nostalgia, a longing to reconnect with that part of herself. What if I went back to the shelter, she mused aloud. I used to love spending time with those animals. Maybe it could help me heal. Now that's a fantastic idea, Lauren exclaimed, her eyes lighting up. You've always had such a gift for connecting with them. It could be exactly what you need right now. Isabella smiled, feeling a spark of excitement. Yes, I think I will. It's time to rediscover what makes me happy. After their walk, they returned home, and Isabella felt a renewed sense of purpose. She spent the evening researching the local animal shelters, wanting to find the right place to volunteer. Each click of the keyboard felt like a step toward reclaiming her life. As the night deepened, she and Lauren settled into a comfortable routine, sharing stories and laughter, while Atlas lay contentedly at their feet, a silent guardian. Isabella's heart felt a little lighter as she embraced the possibilities ahead. The next day, with Atlas at her side, she set out to visit the shelter. As they arrived, the familiar sense of dogs and cleaning supplies enveloped her, igniting memories of laughter and love. Isabella stepped into the shelter, her heart racing with anticipation. Welcome, I'm so glad you decided to come back. The shelter manager, a cheerful woman named Beth, greeted her warmly. We can always use more hands around here. I've missed this place, Isabella admitted, her voice filled with emotion. I want to help however I can. Great, let me show you around. Beth led Isabella through the kennels, introducing her to the dogs eagerly wagging their tails, each one hoping for attention. Atlas trotted beside her, sniffing curiously at the other dogs, his protective nature still evident. Wow, they all seem so happy to see you, Isabella said, laughing as a small terrier jumped up, trying to lick her face. I forgot how much I missed this. You have a special way with them, Beth observed, smiling. They can sense your love and compassion. As the day passed, Isabella found herself immersed in the tasks of feeding, walking, and playing with the dogs. Each wagging tail and joyful bark filled her with a sense of belonging. She realized that here she could channel her pain into something positive, a way to heal and help others at the same time. By the time she left the shelter, that day her heart felt fuller than it had in a long time. Atlas too seemed to thrive in the environment, making new canine friends and enjoying the attention he received. Let's do this. Isabella stood frozen at the altar, her heart racing as the chaos unfolded around her. The echoes of gasps and murmurs from the guests filled the air, but all she could focus on was the wildness in Atlas's eyes and the fury on Thomas's face. As the crowd erupted into confusion, Isabella felt as if she was in a surreal dream, one where everything she thought she knew was being flipped upside down. Isabella, what are you doing? Thomas shouted, his voice strained as he scrambled to get back on his feet. The smug charm he had worn like a mask was replaced by a raw anger that sent chills down her spine. Naomi, the woman who had crashed into this moment, stood resolute, her phone still raised, as if it were a shield. You need to listen to me, Isabella. Thomas isn't who he pretends to be. Look at these. She gestured frantically, her eyes darting between Isabella and the phone. He's been lying to you. Isabella's throat felt dry and she could barely manage to let out a whisper. Lying, what do you mean? Everything I was his fiancée before you and he tore my life apart. He manipulates, he lies, and he's dangerous. Naomi's voice trembled, but her determination shone through. I was about to warn you when I saw Atlas. He knows. He's been protecting you. Isabella's gaze flicked to her loyal companion. Atlas stood firm, his body tense, a low growl emanating from his throat as he regarded Thomas with palpable distrust. In that moment, everything clicked into place. All the signs she had brushed off, the unease Atlas's warnings and her own gut instinct, came rushing back to her. Isabella. Thomas's voice cut through her thoughts. Don't listen to her. She's just trying to ruin our day. You know I love you. Love, is that what you call it? Isabella's voice rose, fueled by a mix of betrayal and newfound clarity. You've lied to me from the start, haven't you? The realization burned in her chest, igniting a fire she didn't know she had. Get a grip. Thomas shot back his frustration, morphing into something darker. This is all a big misunderstanding. You can't throw away everything we've built because of some delusional ex. Delusional? You think I'm delusional? Naomi's eyes blazed with indignation. I have proof, and I'm not the only one. There are others who can tell you. About his lies, Isabella. Just look at the messages. Isabella's heart raced as she took the phone from Naomi's trembling hands. The screen lit up with damning evidence, texts, photos, and even a video of Thomas with another woman, all dated after their engagement. The betrayal felt like a physical blow, and she stumbled back momentarily, losing her balance. No, this isn't real, she whispered, but deep down she knew it was. Each message was a dagger, cutting through the illusion of the perfect life she had envisioned. How could you? Thomas's facade crumbled as he watched her reaction. Isabella, please, you can't believe her. I love you. We can work through this. Just give me a chance. She struggled to find her voice, her mind racing with memories of their relationship, the laughter, the dreams, the promises. But now those memories felt tainted, twisted by the truth that lay before her. Atlas stepped forward, a low growl resonating in his chest as he positioned himself protectively in front of her. It was as if he understood the weight of the moment, sensing the danger that lurked behind the charismatic smile of the man she had trusted. Isabella, listen to your dog, Naomi urged gently, her voice steadying as she stepped closer. He knows you better than anyone. He's been trying to tell you all along. Atlas, Isabella murmured, her voice breaking. She knelt down, her hands trembling as she reached out to him. His warm brown eyes met hers, filled with unwavering loyalty and love. You always knew, didn't you? You were trying to protect me. In that moment, the noise of the world faded away. The wedding guests, the chaos, the anger, it all blurred into the background as she focused on the connection she had with Atlas. He had been her rock, her protector, while she had been blinded by the facade of a perfect life. Isabella, Thomas snapped, desperation seeping into his tone, don't let this woman ruin everything. Think about what we have. What we have, Isabella echoed, her voice steadying. You mean the lies and deceit, the manipulation? She straightened, drawing strength from Atlas, who remained firmly by her side. I won't let you control me anymore. Not now, not ever. Thomas's expression twisted with rage, and for a fleeting moment she saw the true monster behind his charming exterior. You think you can just walk away from this? I won't let you. Let me, Isabella laughed bitterly, shaking her head. You don't get to decide what I do anymore. You've lost that right. She turned to the guests, her voice clear and strong. I'm sorry for this chaos, but I won't marry a man who has lied to me. I deserve more than this. With a final defiant glance at Thomas, she turned her back on him, leaving him seething and exposed. The whispers and murmurs of disbelief filled the air around her, but she felt free for the first time. The weight of the world lifted from her shoulders as she walked away from the altar, from the wedding that would never be. Let's go, Atlas, she whispered, her heart racing with a mix of fear and exhilaration. As they made their way through the stunned crowd, she could feel the eyes of her friends and family on her, but she didn't care. She had made her choice. Once outside, she paused to catch her breath, leaning against a pillar as Atlas stood beside her, his head nestled against her thigh. "What just happened?" she murmured, running her fingers through his fur. "Did that really just happen?" Atlas looked up at her, his expression earnest and protective, as if to say he would always be there for her. "I know," she said softly, her throat tight. "I should have listened to you. You were right, all along." Naomi approached, her eyes filled with empathy. "Are you okay?" Isabella nodded slowly, taking a moment to collect her thoughts. "I think so. I never expected any of this." She gestured back toward the venue where the remnants of her wedding stood in stark contrast to the reality she was now facing. "It all felt so perfect." "It was an illusion," Naomi said gently. "But you're free now. You have a chance to start over." "Start over," Isabella echoed, the weight of those words sinking in. "I don't even know where to begin." "You start by trusting yourself," Naomi replied, her voice filled with warmth. "You have a good heart, Isabella. You'll find your way." Isabella took a deep breath, feeling Atlas lean against her side, grounding her. "I just need some time. Time to figure out what I want. I thought I was ready for forever, but now I feel lost." "You're not alone," Naomi said, her eyes shining with sincerity. "You have your dog and you have me. We can help you find your path." As they stood together, Isabella felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. It wouldn't be easy and the road ahead was uncertain, but she was alive, and she had the chance to rewrite her story. She looked down at Atlas, who gazed up at her with unwavering loyalty, and she knew that together they could face whatever lay ahead. "Thank you," Isabella said, her voice filled with gratitude, "for everything. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm ready to take the first step." With Atlas by her side and a newfound sense of purpose, Isabella embraced the unknown, determined to reclaim her life. The instinct that had guided her through the turmoil was stronger than ever, and as they walked away from the shattered remains of her wedding, she felt a renewed sense of freedom and hope. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but it was hers to define, and she was ready to embrace it. In the aftermath of the chaotic wedding, Isabella Reed found herself engulfed in a silence that felt suffocating. The once vibrant atmosphere had morphed into a haunting echo of disbelief and confusion. Guests had fled, leaving behind whispers of scandal and betrayal. And Isabella stood alone in the now-empty venue, her heart heavy with the weight of shattered dreams. Atlas, her loyal German shepherd, remained by her side, his presence a steady anchor amidst the storm of emotions swirling within her. "Did you see that?" she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper, as she stroked Atlas's fur, seeking comfort in his unwavering loyalty. "I can't believe he would do something like that." Atlas tilted his head, his dark eyes locked onto hers, as if he understood the magnitude of the moment. The confusion in her heart mirrored the chaos outside, where reporters and curious onlookers buzzed like bees around a hive, eager to catch a glimpse of the unfolding drama. Moments later, Lauren, her best friend and unwavering support, burst through the doors, her eyes wide with concern. "Isabella, I was so worried I came as soon as I heard." She rushed toward Isabella, enveloping her in a tight embrace. "I can't believe what just happened." "I feel like I'm in a nightmare," Isabella confessed, her voice trembling. "Everything was supposed to be perfect. I was supposed to marry a monster," Lauren interjected gently, pulling back to look Isabella in the eye. "You didn't lose anything, Isa. You escaped, you saved yourself, you should be proud of that." Isabella glanced down at Atlas, who was still standing protectively at her feet, his posture unwavering. "But it's so embarrassing. I thought he was the one. I thought I was happy." "Happy or just comfortable?" Lauren asked, her tone probing yet compassionate. "You ignored all the signs, didn't you? You let your heart blind you to the truth. You need to be honest with yourself now." "But he was charming and successful," Isabella argued, frustration bubbling beneath her surface. "Everyone loved him." "That's exactly the problem." Lauren's voice softened, but her gaze remained steady. "Sometimes people put on masks to hide their true selves. You can't let their opinions dictate your feelings. You have to trust yourself, and right now that means you need to distance yourself from all this." As the weight of Lauren's words sank in, Isabella felt a flicker of resolve ignite within her. She had been so caught up in the fairy tale, the wedding plans, and the expectations of others that she had lost sight of what truly mattered, her own instincts, her own happiness. "Maybe you're right," Isabella admitted, her voice steadying. "I need to take a step back. I need to think." "Exactly," Lauren encouraged, her eyes gleaming with support. "Let's get out of here. You need some space to breathe, and I can't think of a better way than a little road trip. We'll go somewhere far away from this mess." "Road trip?" Isabella raised an eyebrow, the notion both exciting and terrifying. "Where would we go?" "Anywhere but here. You could use some fresh air, and I know just the place." Lauren's enthusiasm was infectious, igniting a small spark of hope within Isabella's chest. "Let's just drive. We can talk, laugh, and figure out what comes next." As they made their way to the parking lot, Atlas trotted beside Isabella, his tail wagging slightly, as if sensing her shift in mood. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden hue over everything, and for the first time since the wedding disaster, Isabella felt a hint of clarity. "Okay, let's do it," she said, determination creeping into her voice. "Let's go." The drive was filled with a mix of laughter and reflection as Lauren navigated the winding roads while Isabella lost herself in thought. They drove past sprawling fields and shimmering lakes, the scenery gradually shifting from the chaos of the city to the tranquility of the countryside. With every mile, Isabella could feel the tension easing from her shoulders. "Tell me everything," Lauren urged, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled in. "What do you really want now? What do you see for yourself?" "I don't." "No," Isabella admitted, her brow furrowing. "I thought my life was planned out. I thought I was going to be a wife, have a family, and live in a beautiful house. But now I just feel lost." "Lost is okay," Lauren reassured her, glancing over with a soft smile. "Sometimes we need to lose ourselves to find something better. You've always been an architect, Isabella. You've built dreams for others, but maybe now it's time to build something for yourself." Isabella considered this, her mind swirling with possibilities. "Maybe I could focus on my architecture projects. I've always wanted to explore sustainable designs and community spaces. I've been so caught up in the idea of a traditional life that I forgot what I truly love." "Exactly," Lauren exclaimed, her excitement palpable. "And you know what else? We could even do something together. Start a project that helps animals in need. You could combine your passion for architecture with your love for animals." The notion struck a chord deep within Isabella. "I used to volunteer at an animal shelter in college. It was one of the happiest times of my life." She paused, memories flooding back of the joy she felt, working with animals, finding them homes and creating safe spaces for them. "I think I forgot how much I loved that." "Then let's make it happen," Lauren encouraged, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "You have Atlas, and now you can find a way to bring more animals into your life. We can rescue and rehabilitate them while you design the spaces they need." Isabella turned to Atlas, who was now resting his chin on her lap, his eyes filled with loyalty and love. "You're right, buddy. We could do something amazing together." A sense of purpose began to bloom within her, a desire to create, to nurture, and to give back. "See, you're already on the right path," Lauren said, her tone triumphant. "And think of it this way. You'll be creating a life that's authentically yours, free from the expectations of others. You'll be building something real." As they drove deeper into the countryside, Isabella felt a sense of liberation wash over her. The weight of the wedding disaster began to fade, replaced by a newfound clarity. She realized that life wasn't about fitting into a mold or adhering to societal norms. It was about forging her own path, guided by her instincts and passions. "Let's stop at that animal shelter we passed," Isabella suggested, a spark of excitement lighting her eyes. "I want to see if they need any volunteers." "Absolutely," Lauren cheered, her enthusiasm infectious. "Let's go save some lives." As they pulled into the shelter's parking lot, Isabella's heart raced with anticipation. She stepped out of the car, Atlas bounding beside her, his tail wagging with excitement. The scent of fresh grass and the sounds of barking dogs filled the air, and for the first time in what felt like ages, Isabella felt a sense of belonging. Ready? Lauren asked, her eyes shining with encouragement. More than ever. Isabella, replied a smile breaking across her face. With Atlas by her side and a new adventure waiting ahead, she felt ready to embrace whatever came next. Isabella Reed stood at the entrance of the animal shelter, her heart pounding with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. It had been a week since her wedding debacle, a week since she had torn herself away from the life she had meticulously crafted, and a week since she had decided to reclaim her autonomy. The bright signage of the shelter, adorned with cheerful colors, and images of dogs and cats felt like a beacon of hope amidst the chaos that had engulfed her life. "Are you ready, Atlas?" she asked, glancing down at her loyal pastor Alemão, who stood by her side, tail wagging cautiously, but his ears perked up in curiosity. He seemed to sense her nervousness, offering silent support, as he always had. The bond between them had deepened in the wake of the marriage disaster. Atlas had been her protector, her confidant, and now he was her reminder of resilience. As they stepped inside the cacophony of barking dogs and the faint scent of cleaning supplies and wet fur hit Isabella. It was an overwhelming sensory experience, but it also felt grounding. This was a place of second chances, a haven for animals that had been abandoned or mistreated. She took a deep breath, allowing the air to fill her lungs and calm her racing heart. "Hello," a cheerful voice called out from behind the reception desk. A woman in her 40s with curly hair and a welcoming smile approached them. "I'm Lydia. Are you here to volunteer?" "Yes, I am," Isabella replied, surprised by the warmth that spread through her at the woman's enthusiasm. "I've always loved animals, but I've never thought about volunteering before." Lydia clapped, her hands together in delight. "That's wonderful. We can always use more help around here. How about I give you a quick tour first?" Isabella nodded, feeling a flicker of excitement. As they walked through the shelter, Lydia introduced her to the various rooms filled with dogs and cats of all sizes and breeds. Each animal had a story, a past that spoke of resilience and hope, and Isabella felt her heart swell with compassion for them. She could relate to their plight in a way she had never imagined. "Here we have our small dog section," Lydia said, gesturing to a room where tiny terriers and chihuahuas scuttled around in their kennels. "And over there are the larger breeds. We often find that people overlook them because they think they need more space, but all they really need is love and companionship." Isabella watched as a golden retriever bounded toward the front of his kennel tail, wagging furiously, eyes sparkling with hope. "They all just want a chance, don't they?" she murmured, her heart breaking for the dogs that had been left behind. "Exactly," Lydia beamed. "And that's why we're here, to give them a chance at a new life. It's incredibly rewarding work." As they continued the tour, Isabella felt a sense of belonging that had eluded her for so long. Each dog she encountered seemed to sense her presence, their eyes brightening with curiosity. But it was when they stepped into the senior dog section that her heart truly opened. There in the far corner of the room sat a scruffy old dog with graying fur and weary eyes. He lay curled up on a blanket, seemingly indifferent to the world around him. "This is Lennox," Lydia introduced gently. "He's been with us for a while now. He's a sweet old man, but people often overlook him because of his age." Isabella felt an inexplicable pull toward Lennox. There was something in his eyes that resonated with her, a depth of experience, a quiet strength. Can I meet him?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Of course," Lydia encouraged, stepping back to give Isabella some space. As Isabella approached Lennox, she knelt down, allowing him to sniff her hand before extending her fingers gently toward him. "Hey there, buddy," she said softly, her heart aching at the sight of the old dog's weary expression. "I'm Isabella." To her surprise, Lennox lifted his head slightly, his eyes meeting hers. In that moment it felt as if time stood still. A connection sparked between them, a shared understanding of pain and resilience. "I know you've been through a lot," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. "But I promise I'm here now." Lennox wagged his tail ever so slightly, and Isabella's heart soared. She reached out and gently stroked his head, feeling the softness of his fur beneath her fingers. "I think we might need each other," she said, her voice trembling with sincerity. Looks like you're making a friend, Lydia said, watching the interaction with a smile. He's a special one, that's for sure. Can I adopt him? Isabella blurted out, her heart racing at the thought. I mean, is that even possible? Absolutely. We'd love for you to give him a home, Lydia replied, her eyes sparkling with encouragement. He deserves to spend his golden years in a loving environment. Isabella's heart swelled with determination. Then I'll do it. I want to adopt Lennox. Great. Let's get some paperwork started, Lydia said, leading her to a small desk in the corner of the shelter. As Isabella filled out the adoption forms, she couldn't help but glance back at Lennox, who was now lying comfortably on the blanket, watching her with those wise, knowing eyes. It felt as if he understood everything she had been through, and in turn, she felt an overwhelming desire to care for him. Once the paperwork was completed, Lydia handed Isabella a collar and leash. You're officially Lennox's new mom, she said with a grin. Let's grab him and get him settled in. Isabella's heart raced with excitement as she followed. Lydia backed to Lennox's kennel. Hey, buddy, she said, kneeling down again. You're coming home with me. Lennox seemed to sense the change in his fate. He stood up slowly, tail wagging a little faster now, as he approached Isabella, allowing her to fasten the collar around his neck. You're going to love it, she promised, her eyes shining with hope. As they walked out of the shelter together, Atlas by her side, Isabella felt a sense of purpose blooming within her. She was no longer just a woman who had escaped a disastrous engagement. She was a caretaker, a protector. And with Lennox and Atlas beside her, she felt ready to embrace the next chapter of her life. Welcome to your new home, Lennox, she said, glancing back at the older dog, who seemed to absorb his new surroundings with cautious optimism. Let's make it a good one. As they drove back home, Isabella couldn't help but smile. The car was filled with a new energy, a sense of possibility. Lennox lay comfortably in the back seat, his head resting on Atlas, who seemed to approve of the new addition. Looks like we're a little family now, she said, glancing at her two companions in the rearview mirror. When they arrived home, Isabella carefully led Lennox inside. The familiar scent of her apartment greeted her, but now it felt different, imbued with the promise of new beginnings. She showed Lennox around, allowing him to explore at his own pace. Atlas trotted alongside him, offering quiet encouragement and companionship. Let's find you a cozy spot, Isabella suggested, guiding Lennox toward the soft dog bed she had recently bought for Atlas. This will be your place. Lennox sniffed the bed, then settled down, letting out a contented sigh. Isabella beamed, her heart swelling with love for the old dog. I think you'll like it here, she said softly, kneeling beside him and stroking his fur. We're going to take care of each other. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden hue across the room, Isabella sat on the floor next to Lennox and Atlas, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. She realized that while her past had been filled with pain and betrayal, this moment was about healing and hope. She was no longer just Isabella Reed, the architect. She was a woman who had found her voice and her purpose. With a newfound determination, she whispered to her two furry companions, Together we'll make a difference, I promise. Isabella stood at the entrance of the animal shelter, the scent of hay and dog food wafting through the air, mingling with the earthy smell of the outdoors. She took a deep breath, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. It had been a week since she had stepped away from the chaos of her life, and the decision to volunteer at the shelter felt like a leap into the unknown. With Atlas at her side, his ever-watchful eyes scanning the surroundings, she felt a sense of comfort that had been missing for far too long. Are you ready, boy? She asked, kneeling down to scratch behind Atlas's ears. He nuzzled her hand, and she smiled, reassured by his warmth. This is a new start for both of us. As they entered the building, the sounds of barking greeted them like a chaotic symphony. Dogs of all shapes and sizes were behind the bars of their kennels, some wagging their tails in hope, others looking on with despondent eyes. Isabella's heart ached at the sight. She had always loved animals, but now the realization of their plight struck her deeply. They were like her, lost, abandoned, and waiting for someone to believe in them again. Hey there, you must be Isabella, a cheerful voice interrupted her thoughts. She turned to see a woman in her mid-30s with curly brown hair and a welcoming smile. "I'm Sarah, the shelter manager. I'm so glad you decided to join us." "Thank you for having me," Isabella replied, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "I've always wanted to help animals, but everything that happened, well, it made me realize how important it is to give back." Sarah nodded knowingly. "I understand. Many of us have our own stories that brought us here. You'll find that working with these animals can be incredibly healing." She gestured towards the kennels. "Let's get you started. I'll show you around." As they walked through the shelter, Sarah explained the different areas and the needs of each dog. Isabella listened intently, taking mental notes. She felt a sense of purpose growing within her, the first spark of hope igniting since the chaos of her wedding day. "Now this is our special needs section," Sarah said, leading her to a quieter area. "These dogs require extra care and attention. They often get overlooked, but they have so much love to give. Take a look at Lennox." She pointed to a kennel where an older dog lay curled up, his fur, a mix of grey and brown, his eyes reflecting a depth of wisdom and sadness. Isabella approached the kennel, kneeling to get a better look. "Hey there, buddy," she whispered, her heart melting as Lennox lifted his head slightly. He moved slowly, as if every movement was a labor. "You're a handsome boy, aren't you?" "He's about 10 years old," Sarah said softly. "He was found wandering the streets, and he's been with us for a while. He needs a quiet home, someone who can give him the love he deserves." Isabella felt an instant connection with Lennox. "I can't believe someone would abandon such a sweet dog." She reached out to gently stroke his head, and he leaned into her touch, closing his eyes in contentment. A wave of emotion washed over her. She recognized that look of longing and the need for safety. "Would you like to take him for a walk?" Sarah suggested. "It would be a good way for you to bond." "Really, I'd love to." Isabella's heart raced at the thought of spending time with him. Within moments, she was equipped with a leash, and Sarah opened the kennel door. Isabella stepped into the enclosure, kneeling beside Lennox as she clipped the leash onto his collar. "Okay, Lennox, let's go for a stroll," she said, her voice soothing. As they exited the kennel, she felt a rush of joy and anticipation. Atlas trotted beside them, curious yet calm, as if he sensed the importance of this moment. Outside, the sun shone bright, casting a golden hue over the grassy area where they could walk the dogs. Isabella led Lennox, gently encouraging him with soft words. He moved slowly but steadily, and she took her time, allowing him to explore at his own pace. "You know, Lennox," she said, glancing down at him as they walked, "I think we're both looking for a second chance." She could see his tail wagging slightly, and it filled her with hope. "I know what it feels like to be lost and to need a home. I want to help you find yours." Lennox paused to sniff at a flower, and Isabella couldn't help but laugh. "You're a gentleman, aren't you? Always stopping to smell the roses." She felt a weight lift off her shoulders, the burden of her past slowly fading away as she focused on the present. After a while, they found a shaded spot beneath a large tree, and Isabella sat down, patting the ground beside her. Lennox joined her, settling down with a contented sigh. She reached out, stroking his fur, feeling a deep sense of connection. "You're not just a dog, you know. You're a survivor." Atlas lay beside them, resting his head on Isabella's lap, as if he too understood the significance of this moment. She smiled at him, grateful for his unwavering loyalty. "We're a team, aren't we, you and me, and now Lennox too." As they sat there, Isabella's heart swelled with a sense of purpose. She realized that her life didn't have to be defined by her past mistakes or the pain of betrayal. Instead, it could be shaped by love and compassion, not just for herself, but also for those who needed it most. The afternoon passed in a blur of laughter and gentle moments. Isabella learned about Lennox's quirks, how he loved to chase his tail even with his age slowing him down, and how he would perk up at the sound of a treat bag rustling. Each revelation brought her closer to understanding him. When they returned to the shelter, Isabella felt a renewed sense of determination. "I want to do more," she said to Sarah, who was waiting for them. "I want to help these animals find homes. They deserve a chance." Sarah beamed at her enthusiasm. "That's the spirit. We're always looking for volunteers to help with adoption events and community outreach. The more people we can reach, the more lives we can save. I'm in, Isabella declared, feeling a thrill of excitement. I want to be a part of this. I want to make a difference. As they continued to talk about the shelter's needs and upcoming events, Isabella felt a sense of belonging that had eluded her for so long. She was no longer just a woman escaping a painful past. She was becoming someone who could inspire change and bring hope to others. Days turned into weeks, and Isabella immersed herself in her new role at the shelter. She spent her mornings walking dogs, her afternoons organizing adoption events, and her evenings volunteering with the other staff members. Lennox quickly became her shadow, following her wherever she went, his presence a constant reminder of the bond they had formed. One afternoon, while preparing for an adoption event, Isabella caught sight of Atlas lying in the sun, his eyes closed in peaceful slumber. A wave of gratitude washed over her. She realized how far she had come since that fateful day when she had chosen to walk away from Thomas. It was as if Atlas had known all along that this was her path, guiding her toward a future filled with compassion and love. "Hey, Atlas," she said softly, kneeling beside him. "Look at us. We're building a new life, aren't we?" He opened one eye, then the other, as if acknowledging her words. "I couldn't have done it without you." A few days later at the adoption event, Isabella stood beside Lennox, who now wore a bright red bandana around his neck, proudly showcasing his personality. The shelter buzzed with energy as families wandered around looking for their new furry companions. "Isabella, come here for a second," Sarah called out, waving her over. "We have a potential adopter for Lennox." Isabella's heart raced as she approached, feeling a mix of excitement and trepidation. She had grown so attached to Lennox, and the thought of him leaving was bittersweet. But she knew he deserved a loving home, just as she had found a new beginning. "Hi there, I'm Jessica," the woman said, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "I've been looking for the perfect dog, and Lennox caught my eye. He seems so gentle and sweet." "He really is," Isabella replied, her voice warm. "He's been through a lot, but he's such a loving companion. I think he'll make a wonderful addition to your family." As they talked, Isabella shared stories about Lennox's personality and the joy he brought into her life. With each word, she felt a sense of pride, knowing that she had played a part in his journey to find a forever home. After spending some time together, Jessica knelt down to Lennox, who approached her cautiously, his tail wagging tentatively. "You're a good boy, aren't you?" she cooed, and Lennox leaned into her touch, sensing her sincerity. Isabella watched a mixture of hope and sadness swirling inside her. She wanted the best for Lennox, and seeing him warm up to Jessica reassured her that this was the right decision. As the sun, Isabella stood at the window of her new apartment, a modest yet cozy space that felt more like home than any place she had lived in a long time. The sunlight streamed through the sheer curtains, casting a warm glow on the wooden floor. Atlas lay by her feet, his head resting on his paws, while Lennox, the old rescue dog she had adopted, snoozed contentedly in a sunbeam on the couch. The sight of them brought a smile to her face, a genuine one that she hadn't experienced in what felt like ages. As she gazed out at the bustling city below, she reflected on the journey that had led her here. Just months ago, she'd been standing at the altar preparing to marry a man who had turned out to be a stranger. The memory of that day still sent shivers down her spine. Thomas's cold demeanor, the chaos that had erupted, and the realization that she had almost made the biggest mistake of her life. But now she felt a sense of freedom, an exhilarating understanding that the life she had envisioned for herself was still possible, just in a different form. "Hey, boys," she called, turning to her furry companions. Atlas perked up his ears, twitching, as he looked at her, while Lennox lifted his head lazily, his tail thumping softly against the couch. "What do you think about a little adventure today?" Atlas stood up, his tail wagging furiously, and Lennox let out a soft bark as if to say he was in. Isabella laughed, the sound ringing through the apartment. There was a warmth in her heart that she had thought was lost forever. "All right then, let's go to the park." She grabbed their leashes and slipped on her sneakers, the scent of fresh grass and blooming flowers filling her with anticipation. Outside, the day was bright and clear, the kind of day that made everything feel possible. Isabella felt the weight of the world lift off her shoulders as she walked through the bustling streets, the sounds of laughter and chatter filling the air. When they reached the park, she released the leashes, allowing Atlas and Lennox to roam freely. Atlas bounded ahead, his exuberance infectious, while Lennox trotted slowly, stopping to sniff at every intriguing scent. Isabella settled onto a park bench, watching them with a contented sigh. "Who would have thought," she mused aloud, "that I'd find such joy in the company of two dogs?" Just a few months ago, she had been a woman trapped in a toxic relationship, feeling lost and alone. Now she was discovering a new purpose in life, one that revolved around love, loyalty, and the happiness of her furry friends. As she sat there, she pulled out her phone and opened her notes app, where she had started jotting down ideas for an animal rescue project. She had been inspired by her experiences at the shelter, watching animals that had been abandoned or mistreated find their forever homes. She wanted to create a network that would not only rescue animals, but also educate the community about responsible pet ownership. "What do you think, guys?" she asked, her fingers tapping on the screen. "Should we start a small rescue organization? Maybe something focused on elderly dogs like Lennox?" She glanced down, and Atlas looked at her with those intelligent eyes, as if he understood every word. Lennox, still sniffing around, gave a soft woof, as if to agree. Just then, a familiar voice broke her reverie. "Isabella." It was Lauren, her best friend, rushing toward her with an excited smile. "I was hoping I'd find you here." Isabella stood up, laughing as they embraced. "Lauren, it's so good to see you," she motioned to the dogs. "This is Atlas and Lennox, my new partners in crime." Lauren knelt down to pet Lennox, who wagged his tail appreciatively. "They're adorable. I can't believe how much you've changed. Since, she glanced around, lowering her voice. "Since that day, you seem so much happier." "I am," Isabella admitted, her heart swelling with gratitude. "I've come to realize how important it is to trust my instincts, and these two have helped me do just that." "You're doing incredible things," Lauren said, standing up and looking at her friend with pride. "Have you thought more about that rescue project you mentioned?" "Actually, yes," Isabella's face lit up. "I've been brainstorming ideas, and I want to focus on helping older dogs. They often get overlooked, just like I did with Thomas. I think we can make a real difference." Lauren nodded enthusiastically. "That sounds amazing. I'm in. We can start small, maybe even organize some fundraisers and awareness events. I have some contacts that could help us." "Really?" Isabella felt a rush of excitement. "That would be incredible. I want to educate people about adopting older dogs and the importance of giving them a second chance." They walked together, the dogs bounding ahead, and Isabella felt a sense of purpose growing within her. I never thought I'd be doing something like this," she confessed. "After everything that happened with Thomas, I was so lost, but now I finally feel like I'm on the right path." "That's because you are," Lauren replied, squeezing Isabella's shoulder. "You've taken your life back, and it's inspiring. I think you're going to help so many animals and people too." As they strolled through the park, ideas flowed between them like a refreshing stream. They brainstormed potential names for the rescue, discussed social media campaigns, and even talked about hosting events at local pet stores to raise awareness. "Maybe we could have a meet and greet day where people can come to meet the dogs before adopting," Isabella suggested, her mind racing with possibilities. "And we can partner with local vets for discounted health checkups for newly adopted pets." "Absolutely," Lauren replied. "We can turn this into something really special, just like you've turned your life around." The sun began to lower in the sky, casting a golden hue over the park. Isabella paused, watching as Atlas and Lennox played together, their joy infectious. She said softly, "I used to think that love meant finding the perfect partner. But now I see that love can come in so many forms. It can be the loyalty of a dog, the friendship of a best friend, or the joy of helping those in need." "Exactly," Lauren said, her eyes bright with understanding. "You've learned a powerful lesson, and it's beautiful to see you embracing it." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Isabella felt a sense of peace wash over her. She had been through the storm, and now she was ready to embrace the calm. With Atlas and Lennox by her side, she knew she could face anything. As they made their way back to the car, Isabella glanced at her friends, her dogs and her best friend, and felt a surge of gratitude. "Thank you, Atlas. Thank you, Lennox. And thank you, Lauren. You've all shown me what it means to love and be loved, and I won't take that for granted." Atlas barked happily, and Lennox wagged his tail as if to say they were in this together. There was a new chapter ahead, one filled with promise and purpose. And for the first time in a long while, Isabella felt ready to write her story. One where she could be the hero surrounded by loyal companions who had always known her worth. As the sun dipped low in the sky, casting a warm, golden hue over the park, Isabella Reed walked slowly, her heart lighter than it had been in weeks. The air was crisp and the leaves crunched underfoot, creating a soothing rhythm that matched the pulse of her newfound freedom. Beside her trotted Atlas, his strong, muscular form exuding confidence and loyalty. The faithful German shepherd had been her protector, her companion, and now as they strolled together he seemed to embody the very essence of her restored spirit. Isabella paused to take in the tranquil surroundings. The park was alive with families, enjoying the beautiful afternoon. Children laughed as they raced one another, and the smell of popcorn wafted in from a nearby vendor. It was a scene of joy, a stark contrast to the chaos that had once threatened to engulf her life. "Look at them, Atlas," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I used to think I needed a perfect life, a picture-perfect wedding. But now—" She trailed off, her thoughts drifting back to the events of her past. She had been so blinded by the idea of love that she had overlooked the most crucial warning signs. "Now I realize that perfection is just an illusion." Atlas glanced up at her, his expressive brown eyes sparkling with understanding. He seemed to sense her reflections, as if he was quietly encouraging her to continue. "Do you remember that day?" she asked, a soft smile creeping onto her face. "When you dashed into the middle of the aisle, I thought my heart would stop. I was scared, but you knew something I didn't. You were my guardian angel." With a gentle nudge, Atlas leaned against her leg, grounding her in that moment. It was a bond that transcended words, a connection forged through loyalty and instinct. Isabella couldn't help but chuckle softly as she recalled the looks of shock on the guests' faces. "Who would have thought I'd owe my freedom to you, buddy?" she said, ruffling his fur affectionately. "I guess I should have listened to you from the start." Her heart swelled with gratitude as she thought of how far she had come. The pain of her recent past was still fresh, but it no longer felt like a weight hanging over her. Rather, it had become a part of her journey, a chapter that had shaped her into the woman she was becoming. She felt empowered, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. As they continued their walk, Isabella's thoughts shifted to Lennox, the elderly dog she had recently adopted from the shelter. He had a gentle demeanor, a reminder of the resilience both she and Atlas had shown. "I can't wait for you to meet Lennox," she said to Atlas. "I think you two will get along just fine. He's a bit of a grumpy old man, but he's got a good heart." Atlas let out a soft woof as if agreeing with her. It was as if he understood that Lennox was another soul in need of love and protection, just like they had been. Isabella's heart warmed at the thought of creating a little family unit, a trio bound together by their shared journeys of survival. "Imagine us, all three of us, walking through the park like this every day," she mused, her voice filled with hope. "We'll make new memories, ones that are filled with joy and warmth. No more pretending to be someone I'm not." As they reached a large oak tree, Isabella decided to take a break. She found a bench nearby and sat down, Atlas plopping down next to her, his head resting on her lap. She ran her fingers through his fur, taking a moment to appreciate the simple pleasure of their companionship. "You know," she said, looking out at the park, "I've been thinking about opening my own animal rescue project. A safe place for dogs like Lennox who deserve a second chance." Atlas lifted his head, his ears perking up. It was as if he was encouraging her to pursue this dream. "I want to create a space where people can come and see how amazing these animals are," she continued, her excitement growing. "A place where they can find their forever homes. I want to show others what you and Lennox have shown me, that love comes in many forms." She closed her eyes for a moment, envisioning the bustling activity of the rescue center. She could see volunteers caring for the dogs' families coming in to adopt, and the joyous reunions that would occur. It was a beautiful dream, and for the first time she felt truly capable of making it a reality. "Do you think I can do it?" she asked Atlas, her voice filled with uncertainty. "What if I fail?" Atlas responded by leaning closer, resting his head against her shoulder, a silent affirmation of support. She smiled at his unwavering presence, realizing that she had a team, Atlas by her side and soon Lennox too. "Okay," she said, determination flooding her voice. "I won't let fear hold me back any longer. I'll start small, maybe volunteer at the shelter more often and see where that takes me." Just then, a young couple passed by, holding hands and laughing. They stopped to admire Atlas, who greeted them with a friendly wag of his tail. "He sure knows how to charm people, doesn't he?" Isabella said, grinning. The couple laughed, and Atlas basked in their attention, showing off his playful side. "See, even when things seem tough," she mused, "there's always a silver lining. Sometimes all you need is a little love and a good friend to help you through." As the sun began to set, painting the sky with hues of pink and orange, Isabella felt a sense of peace envelop her. She had faced her demons, and though the scars would always remain, they were now symbols of her strength. She had learned to trust her instincts, to listen to the quiet whispers of her heart, and in doing so she had liberated herself. "Let's head home, Atlas," she said, standing up and stretching her limbs. "We've got a lot of work to do." With Atlas leading the way, they walked back through the park, the fading light casting long shadows behind them. Isabella felt lighter, as if each step carried away the remnants of her past. She was ready to embrace the future, one paw print at a time. As they reached her car, she paused to take one last look at the park, a smile dancing on her lips. "This is just the beginning," she whispered, feeling a surge of hope. "I can't wait to see what's next." And with that, she climbed into the car, Atlas, jumping into the back seat, ready for their next adventure. Together they would forge a new path, one filled with love, purpose, and the unbreakable bond of friendship. Isabella stood in front of the large mirror in the modest apartment she now called home, the sunlight streaming through the window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. She had spent the past few days navigating the storm that followed the abrupt end of her wedding, her heart still heavy with the weight of betrayal and the abruptness of her new reality. The reflection staring back at her was a blend of vulnerability and resilience, a woman who had just begun to redefine herself. After the chaos of the wedding, she had taken time away from the public eye, retreating into the warmth of her home with Atlas by her side. The loyal dog seemed to sense her pain, offering silent companionship as she wrestled with her emotions. Now, however, she was ready to step outside and face the world again, even if it felt intimidating. "Okay, Atlas, let's go for a walk," she said. Her voice steady, though a hint of uncertainty lingered. The dog perked up his ears, standing alert. As he nudged her leg with his nose, eager for their daily outing, Isabella smiled at him, grateful for his unwavering presence. "You're my best friend, you know that." As they walked through the neighborhood, Isabella found solace in the rhythm of her steps and the sound of Atlas's paws padding softly beside her. She breathed in the fresh air, trying to shake off the lingering anxiety that clung to her like a shadow. The world continued to move around her, oblivious to the upheaval in her life. Children played in yards, couples strolled hand in hand, and the scent of blooming flowers filled the air. But as she passed a park, something caught her eye, a small animal shelter that had recently opened. The vibrant banners outside proclaimed, "Adopt, don't shop." A pang of nostalgia hit her as she recalled the joy she had felt volunteering at a shelter years ago, before life had led her into the whirlwind romance with Thomas. The memories flooded back, the wagging tails, the soft eyes looking up at her, the sense of purpose that had filled her heart. It was a simple joy she had abandoned along the way. "Let's check it out, Atlas." She felt a flicker of excitement as she approached the entrance, and Atlas trotted beside her, his tail wagging in anticipation. Inside, the atmosphere was warm and welcoming. The walls were painted in bright colors, adorned with pictures of happy pets and their new families. The air was alive with the sounds of barking dogs and the laughter of volunteers. Isabella's heart swelled with a sense of belonging as she wandered deeper into the shelter. A friendly volunteer approached them, her smile genuine. "Welcome, are you here to adopt or just to look around?" "Just looking, I think," Isabella replied, her voice slightly hesitant. "I used to volunteer at a shelter years ago, and I wanted to reconnect with that part of my life." "Wonderful, we'd love to have you back," the volunteer said enthusiastically. "We're always in need of help, and every little bit makes a difference." Isabella felt a rush of warmth at the prospect. "I'd like that. I really would." As they continued to explore, Atlas seemed to take in the scents and sounds with keen interest. He sniffed excitedly at the cages, his curiosity piqued by the various animals inside. Isabella watched as he approached a small, timid dog in the corner of one of the pens, a scruffy terrier mix with soulful eyes that seemed to plead for attention. "Hey there, buddy." Isabella crouched down, her heart melting at the sight. The dog wagged his tail hesitantly, unsure of her intentions. "What's your name?" she asked the volunteer. "This little guy is Lennox," the volunteer replied. "He's been with us for a while. He's a bit older, and unfortunately people tend to overlook him because of his age." Isabella's heart ached at the thought. Why would anyone do that? He looks like a sweetheart. He is. He just needs a little time to adjust, but once you earn his trust, he's a loyal companion, the volunteer explained. "We believe he deserves a second chance." Isabella felt a connection stir within her. She knelt down beside Lennox's pen, extending her hand, slowly letting him sniff her before making any moves. "Come here, Lennox," she coaxed softly. "You don't have to be afraid." With cautious steps, Lennox approached her, his tail wagging a little more confidently. She could see the weariness in his eyes, the remnants of a life that had not been kind. In that moment, Isabella saw her own reflection in him, a soul longing for acceptance, a heart yearning for a place to belong. "Would you like to meet him?" "Outside," the volunteer suggested. "We can take him for a walk in the yard. It might help him relax." "Yes, please," Isabella replied, her heart racing with anticipation. She wanted to give Lennox a chance, just as she was trying to give herself. I'd love that. The volunteer led them to a fenced area outside, and soon Isabella was standing in the sun with Lennox by her side. Atlas, ever the protector, kept a watchful eye on the newcomer, his demeanor friendly but alert. Isabella felt a sense of hope wash over her as she watched Lennox explore his new surroundings, taking tentative steps in the grass. "Good boy, Lennox," she praised, her voice full of encouragement. "You're doing great." Lennox sniffed around, slowly gaining confidence. Isabella felt a smile tug at her lips as she watched him. The weight of her past began to lift, replaced by the warmth of new beginnings. She turned to Atlas, who seemed to approve of the new addition, his tail wagging in a slow rhythmic dance. "Looks like you're okay with him, huh?" she said, ruffling Atlas's fur affectionately. "You're such a good judge of character." After some time, Isabella knelt down beside Lennox, who had finally approached her with more assurance. To know, Lennox, I think we could be good for each other," she said softly. "I could use a friend who understands what it's like to start over." Lennox looked up at her, his eyes reflecting a mixture of curiosity and trust. In that moment, Isabella felt an unspoken promise between them, a promise of companionship, healing, and love. Just then, the volunteer returned, a knowing smile on her face. "How's it going? I see you've made a connection with Lennox." "I think we have," Isabella replied, her heart swelling with affection for the dog. "I'd like to adopt him." The volunteer's smile widened. "That's wonderful. I can help you with the paperwork. You won't regret it. He's a special boy." As they moved back inside, Isabella's heart raced with excitement. She was ready to embrace this new chapter in her life, one that was no longer defined by the shadows of her past. With Lennox by her side, she felt a sense of purpose rekindling within her, a chance to nurture, to love, and to heal. "Atlas, you're going to love having a brother," she said, her voice filled with joy. Atlas barked in agreement, as if he understood that they were embarking on a new journey together. As Isabella completed the adoption process, she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. She had come to the shelter seeking solace, and in return, she found a companion who needed her just as much as she needed him. In that moment, she realized that sometimes the most profound connections come from the most unexpected places. With Lennox and Atlas by her side, she felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. She was no longer just a woman recovering. From heartbreak, she was a guardian, a protector and a friend. And as they stepped out of the shelter, the sun shining brightly above Isabella couldn't help but smile, knowing that this was just the beginning of a beautiful journey. As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the park, Isabella Reed walked with a newfound lightness in her heart. The air was crisp, hinting at the approaching autumn, but the warmth of the moment wrapped around her like a familiar blanket. Atlas, her loyal German shepherd, trotted beside her, his posture relaxed and tail wagging gently. Lennox, the elderly dog they had adopted from the shelter just weeks ago, ambled a few steps behind his graying muzzle and slightly limping gait, a testament to the years he had endured without a home. "Look at them," Isabella remarked, her voice tinged with amusement, as she watched Atlas and Lennox playfully chase after a fallen leaf. "I think they're having the time of their lives." Lennox, despite his age, leapt after the fluttering leaf, his spirit unbroken by the years. Atlas, ever the exuberant companion, bounded after him, barking joyfully. Isabella couldn't help but smile, the corners of her mouth lifting in a genuine expression of happiness. It was a stark contrast to the feelings that had consumed her just months prior, when the thought of a wedding and a future with Thomas Caldwell had suffocated her dreams. As they reached a small clearing, Isabella settled onto a weathered bench, its surface warm from the sun. She beckoned Atlas to sit beside her, and he obliged, resting his head on her lap. Lennox, not wanting to be left out, ambled over and settled at her feet, his eyes sparkling with trust. This was the family she had unknowingly longed for, and the comfort they provided wrapped around her like a protective shield. "Can you believe how far we've come?" she mused aloud, stroking Atlas's fur. "I mean, just a few months ago I was standing at the altar, thinking I was about to make the biggest mistake of my life." She chuckled softly, shaking her head at the memory. "And now here we are together, completely free." Atlas lifted his head, his dark eyes meeting hers, as if understanding every word. Isabella had often marveled at the connection they shared, a bond that transcended the ordinary. It was as if Atlas had always known her heart, recognizing the pain and despair before she had even acknowledged them herself. "I don't know what I would have done without you," she continued, her voice softening. "You saved me, you know. From that life from him." Her heart ached at the thought of Thomas, the man whose charming facade had concealed a darker reality. But she felt no bitterness as she stared into the trees, their leaves whispering secrets in the gentle breeze. Instead, she felt gratitude for Atlas, for Lennox, and for the lessons learned. Just then, a familiar voice broke her reverie. "Isabella." It was Lauren, her best friend, who approached with a bright smile. "I thought I'd find you here. I just had to see how you were doing." "Lauren?" Isabella exclaimed, her face lighting up. She stood and enveloped her friend in a warm embrace. "I'm so glad you came. I was just talking about how much I appreciate having you in my life." Lauren stepped back, her gaze sweeping over the scene. "And I see you're making some new friends," she said, glancing down at Lennox. "He looks so content." Isabella nodded, her heart swelling with pride. "Lennox is adjusting wonderfully. He's really become part of the family. I think he knows he's safe now." She reached down to scratch behind Lennox's ears, eliciting a soft sigh from the old dog. "It's amazing how quickly he's warmed up to us." "Dogs have a way of sensing love," Lauren replied, her eyes sparkling with understanding. "I'm so proud of you, Isa. You've turned your life around. I remember how lost you felt after everything." She paused, her expression softening. "You've come so far." Isabella felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She had spent so long feeling like a victim of circumstance, but now she was the author of her own story. "Thank you, Lauren. I feel stronger every day." She glanced at Atlas, who was watching her intently. "It's all thanks to these two. They've shown me what true companionship and love really mean." Lauren reached out and rubbed Atlas's back, eliciting a playful bark from the dog. "Well, they're lucky to have you too. You're a natural at this." She looked at Isabella, her expression turning serious. "But how are you really doing? I know you've been through a lot." Taking a deep breath, Isabella considered the question. "It's still a process," she admitted. "There are days when I feel the weight of everything that happened, and I question if I'll ever fully trust again. But then I look at Atlas and Lennox, and I remember that love comes in many forms. They've taught me that I can love again, but on my own terms. That's beautiful, Lauren smiled, her eyes shining with pride. And it's so important that you're taking this time for yourself. You deserve to heal and find joy in your own way. I feel like I'm finally discovering who I am without the shadow of someone else's expectations hanging over me, Isabella said, her voice gaining strength. I've started volunteering at the shelter more regularly. It's been incredibly fulfilling to help other animals find their forever homes. She glanced at Lennox, who was now dozing peacefully on the grass. I want to give them the love and stability I didn't have for so long. Lauren beamed at her friend. You're going to make such a difference in their lives, just like you've made in Lennox's. You're a light Isabella. Isabella felt warmth spread through her chest at Lauren's words. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I hadn't listened to my instincts that day. What if I'd gone through with the wedding? She shuddered at the thought. It's terrifying to think about. But you did listen, Lauren reminded her gently, and that's what matters. You chose to trust yourself, and it led you to this moment. She gestured to the park around them, to the dogs playing and the laughter of children echoing in the distance. It led you to a new beginning. Yeah, Isabella agreed, her heart swelling with gratitude. I'm ready for whatever comes next. I want to create a space for animals in need, maybe even start a rescue project of my own. Her eyes sparkled with excitement at the thought. It would be a way to honor what I've been through while making a real difference. Absolutely. And I'll help you however I can, Lauren said enthusiastically. We can plan events, raise funds, whatever it takes. You won't be alone in this. Isabella's heart swelled at her friend's unwavering support. Thank you, Lauren. I don't know what I'd do without you. Just then, a sudden commotion broke their conversation. Atlas perked up. His ears pricked as he turned his head toward a nearby group of children who were laughing and playing with a frisbee. Without warning, he bounded over to join them, eager to partake in the fun. Lennox, sensing the excitement, followed slowly behind his tail, wagging with the last remnants of youthful enthusiasm. Looks like they're ready for some playtime. Isabella laughed, watching, as Atlas happily interacted with the children, bounding after the frisbee like a puppy despite his protective spirit. He's such a natural. He really is, Lauren chuckled, shaking her head in disbelief. It's like he was born to be a companion. And Lennox, well, he's a gentle soul who just needs a little love. As they watched the dogs play, Isabella felt a sense of peace wash over her. The chaos of her past felt distant, like a dream fading with the dawn. She was no longer the woman standing at the altar, filled with uncertainty and fear. She was a woman on the brink of something beautiful, surrounded by love and support, ready to embrace whatever came next. Let's join them, Isabella suggested, her heart lighter than it had been in years. After all, what's a day in the park without a little fun? Absolutely, Lauren agreed, her face lighting up. Together they walked toward the children, and their furry companions' laughter echoing through the park as they joined in the joy of the moment. In that sun-drenched afternoon, with the warmth of friendship and the loyalty of her dogs surrounding her, Isabella felt the weight of the past lift entirely. She was free, she was alive, and she was ready to write her own story, one filled with love, purpose, and the unwavering instinct that had saved her.